Hey students, Mrs. Loy here with another video lesson. This video lesson is on making inferences. In this video, we're going to define what an inference is, discuss the reading process behind drawing an inference or inferences. We're going to practice making inferences using a 5-step process that's super user-friendly and should be jotted down in your notebook in the literary concepts section. And lastly, we're going to do an example together. I would highly recommend putting the example in your notes as well. Let's go ahead and get started by opening up the Google Doc in your module. This is the Google Doc that's in your module. Let's go ahead and start by drawing a definition of inferences in our notebooks. Or not drawing, but defining what an inference is. An inference is going to be an educated guess based on the experience with the text that we're reading or the prior knowledge that we have within our own lives. Go ahead and put that definition in your notebook and let's proceed on. The reading process that we're going to be discussing today are going to be finding evidence and details and then drawing an inference based on those evidences. A lot of students will try to draw their inference and then go back and work on finding their evidence. But if you look at the reading process here, you'll notice we go from finding evidence to then inferencing. It's what happens between the details and the answer that are the most important parts of this process. What does this process look like? Well, step 1, you need to read and view the text. We're going to do that together here in just a minute when we get into our example. Step 2, we need to read the question. The question is what's related. It's what you're trying to draw from the text. Third, probably the most important, is listing the relevant details. I'm going to give you a really nifty way to track those details in a silhouette when we get further into this document. Step 4, put the details together. We're going to start to draw some connections and find some relationships between the relevant details that we found in the text in order to draw our inference. And then lastly, step 5, determine what they mean. That's your actual inference. Let's look at a simple story and let's work through this process together. Now students, I want to stress to you that this is a really simple story and it's going to be really easy to draw an inference from this text. But when we're able to do it with a more simple text, it's going to make it a lot easier when we get into the more complex text that we'll be studying this year. So let's take a look at our read below because step 1 is to read the text. Imagine a half a dozen students standing at the end of the street. It's a dark morning at 7 a.m. The students are huddled together. Several are hugging themselves. Others are jumping up and down. And still others are rubbing their hands together and huffing on them. When the bus arrives, one student hollers, "Bus!" and all the students run to get on the vehicle. So again, step 1 was to read the text. Step 2, let's read the question. What season does this story take place in? I know. The question and the answer seem really easy. We automatically want to think, yep, this is winter, and then we would draw that conclusion and try to go back and find our evidence. But if you remember from our discussion above, the reading process includes finding the evidence first and then drawing an inference about our text. So let's start to list some of our relevant details. I've done them in the picture below. They're pink. So if I'm looking for relevant details, first thing that I notice is that it's dark and it's already 7 a.m., but it's still dark. So 7 a.m. dark, I wrote that next to the nose in the silhouette below. Then it talks about students being huddled together and hugging themselves. Notice that I put that near the forehead of the silhouette. Then we have students jumping up and down and students rubbing their hands together. I put those on the left side of my silhouette because again, these are things that I know. Lastly, I have all the students running to get on the bus. These are all relevant details that I took from the story. Where do we go from here? We now need to start to make some connections. Looking at this next picture, you'll notice that I've made some connections between the pink details that I found in the text and the green connections on the inside of my silhouette. The huffing on the hands and the jumping up and down all have to do with students moving around. The hugging themselves demonstrates that they're trying to keep warm. We could even say that the huffing on the hands and jumping up and down are also ways to keep warm. Running to the bus is another way to keep warm. The fact that it's 7 a.m. reveals to the reader that it's not summer. So if you look at the base of the neck of my silhouette, I went ahead and wrote the word winter because that's the conclusion that I'm able to draw from the answer, from the details that I came up with. So let's quickly review. The reading process of creating an inference starts with evidence and details. We're going to be listing the details from the text. Then we're going to be coming up with that inference or that answer so that we can achieve a new understanding about the text. In order to work our way through this reading process, we need to read the text carefully. We need to read the question that we're trying to address about the text. We need to list relevant details first. Do those on the outside of your silhouette. Number 4, put the details together. Start to make those connections and those relationships within the silhouette, and then see what you can determine about the text to achieve that new understanding. Let's put this into practice. If you scroll down to the last 2 pages of your Google Doc, you'll notice that this is your practice assignment for today. So what you need to do is go ahead and read the text from Beyond the Grave by Troy Taylor. After you read the text, you're going to address the question, who pays an annual visit to Poe's grave? Once you understand that question, you'll go back into the text, and on the outside of your own silhouette, in this space here, you're going to list all of the relevant details. Then you're going to look for patterns and relationships, and those are going to go inside your silhouette in this space here. Lastly, you're going to write a sentence below your silhouette as to who you believe pays a visit to Poe. Let's take a look at that. So on the last page of your Google Doc, it says, use your connections and evidence from the text to prove your answer. I believe that, here's where you insert your inference from the text, because here's where you can use all those details and those connections and relationships to prove that your answer is true. Once you finish both of these, the silhouette and the writing component, you can go ahead and submit these as your Canvas assignment for the day. Happy reading and happy inferencing.